Hi, this is John Semper. Some of you know me as the producer and head writer of Spider-Man the Animated Series. I've also written cartoons like Scooby-Doo, The Smurfs, Static Shock, and many, many others. I've been interviewed by a lot of people over the years, but none of them have been as fun and adorable and charming as Amber, the fangirl. So you are watching In Conversation with Amber, the fangirl, and I hope that you will enjoy her conversation with me.
Hi guys, Amber here. Welcome back to In Conversation with ATF. My guest today is a writer. He is best known for writing shows like the new Scooby and Scrappy Doo show, the Smurfs, the Snorks, the Jetsons, Kissy Fur, DuckTales, Fraggle Rock, the animated series, Spiderman, Rugrats, Extreme Ghostbusters, Clifford the Big Red Dog, The Adventures of Chuck and Friends, and so many more. And he was also the first Black writer for TV animation. My guest is John Semper. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here, and it's great to meet you.
It's great to meet you too, John. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I think it's evening your time, but it's a bright, beautiful noontime day here in Southern California. I live in Burbank, where a lot of the film studios are. So it's the weather's wonderful.
Oh, that's Burbank. That's where TF Con's going ahead, the Transformers convention. I think so. Isn't there like an airport in Burbank?
Yes, there is. There's a Burbank airport, and probably it's happening at the Marriott Hotel.
The Marriott Hotel. That's where it's happening. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's where it's
that's
going on.
that's about 5 minutes away from where I live.
Wow, they've got so many guests there. They've got Neil Ross, Michael Bell, Alan Oppenheimer. They've got a lot
Yeah.
of good guests there.
All of whom I've worked with.
Oh, really?
Oh
Wow.
yeah.
You've worked on John has worked with a lot of people. Like, actually, I've got to ask, have you worked with Frank Welker or Corey Burton?
I don't remember if I've worked with Corey Burton, but I've certainly worked with Frank Welker because I did. I started my career writing Scooby-Doo. So, and I started my career at Hanna-Barbera, where Frank was doing lots and lots and lots of work. So yes, I've met Frank and I worked with Frank. And because my career occupied the period of time that it did, which is sort of from the early 1980s all the way till now.
Mhm.
I was able to catch the tail end of all the old time voiceover people like Mel Blanc and Henry Corden and all of those guys, John
Mhm.
Stevenson and everybody, all Don Messick, Dawes Butler, they were all still doing voices when I started writing. So I got to work with a lot of them, and then shifting over to the new guard. So you're talking Rob Paulson, Bob Bergen, Frank Welker. I got to work with all of those guys too.
Wonderful. May I ask, by any chance, have you worked? Wait, what? When did you say you got into writing for animation? What year?
Early 80s, I'd say probably around 82.
All right, I see. I was going to say, by any chance, have you worked with either June Foray or Bill Scott?
Yeah, I never worked with Bill. I met Bill. In fact, I have an autographed Bullwinkle cell on my.
Really?
I do.
Oh my
um,
God.
Bill and June. Well, I worked with June Foray on the Smurfs because she was Jokey
Cute,
Smurf.
jokey, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I worked with June, and I knew June. I met June on many occasions, and I have an autographed Rocky cell from her as well, and I think also Nell from Dudley Do Right. I
No
have an
Fenwick.
autographed Nell cell. Bill Scott and June Foray. Every summer, there's an animation organization called a SIPA, and they would have a big cell sale, animation cell sale, and they'd usually hold it at a mall.
Yeah. Or sometimes they
And
do it at June's house, like I heard they did at one point.
yeah, I think in the early days they might have done it at her house, but as it got bigger and bigger, they started having it at malls. And you could just buy animation cells. You'd walk in, there'd be a ton of animation cells. You could buy them for almost next to nothing, $10, $5.
Yeah.
And midway through the event, Bill and June and a couple of people, a very young Bobby Bergen at one time, they would get up and they would perform a script from Rocky and Bullwinkle live. And so I got to see them do that a number of times. But yes, I have met them.
Wow, John, I don't know why I didn't come to you sooner because I've actually done a documentary on Bill Scott.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I saw that on YouTube, right?
yeah, that's my
Yeah.
portrait of a moose. That's me. I'm the one
Oh
who
my
made
goodness. That
that.
was very well done. I
Thank
really enjoyed that.
you. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it was so much fun to do. I think it was my little pandemic baby because I literally started it at the beginning of the pandemic, and then I kind of, well, I know we're still in a pandemic now, but June 2020, what? No, that's not right. August 2021, that's when I released it.
That's great.
It premiered on Bill's birthday.
Wow.
I did a little
Wow.
Zoom premiere, and there was a lot of people who came. I think there was Bob Kurtz, Will Ryan was there. Who else was there? I can't remember off the top of my head. Skip Craig was there. You know who Skip Craig is? He wrote for Rock and Bull Uncle. And a few other voice actors were there. Jay Ward's granddaughter came along, Amber Ward. It was
Oh,
just
that's
amazing.
wonderful. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Well, yeah, I did have the pleasure of meeting Bill on many occasions. And as I say, I worked with June. And I don't know if you know that you mentioned Will Ryan. I don't know if you know that Will passed away recently.
I know. I was
Okay. Yeah.
absolutely heartbroken.
Yeah. He was a great guy, and I knew him pretty well. So yeah.
He
Yeah.
was so lovely. I did a little speech for his memorial a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
He's just such a nice guy. It was pretty much like Katie Lee gave me his email, and I obviously set up a Zoom interview with him. And then something kind of just hit it off because I enjoyed talking about America. Will enjoyed talking about the UK. And then we just kept in touch. We would just constantly Zoom call each other, just talking and just gossiping about everything. It was just so lovely.
Yeah.
And I had plans obviously to jet out to America to meet him, but obviously that didn't happen. Will
You would
passed
have
away.
enjoyed his Biffle and Schuster. You knew about Biffle and Schuster?
I did indeed. I do indeed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for your viewers, it was a kind of a fake 1930s comedy team
Yeah.
that he did with Nick Santamaria. They used to do a live show in Pasadena, and I would go every year. Actually, they did it several times a year, and they always did one at Christmas. And I would go to their Christmas show, and I would usually go to some of their other shows. And it doesn't seem real to me that there isn't going to be a Biffle and Schuster show anymore, because I really enjoyed them. But yes, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just one thing I am grateful for is not only my friendship with Will, but the fact that he got to see my documentary before he passed away because he
Yes,
took part in it.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm grateful for that. I mean,
Well, it was very well done.
thank you. I remember one of the last emails he sent me was I hope you had a good sleep, you little documentary you. I was like, oh. So honestly, it's just nearly making me cry talk about him because I miss him dearly. It just doesn't feel real anymore. I'm not getting emails off him because I used to always look at his emails. We'd have really long email conversations just talking about different things, and just emailing him now and just not getting anything back. It just doesn't feel right. It feels just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That's his
Yeah.
heart. Yeah, I miss him, but I'm glad, obviously, he took part in my documentary. I'm glad a lot of people took part in my documentary. I mean, who did I have? I got Corey Burton to do it. Who else did I get? I got Billy West. Frank Welker contributed a little bit. Who else did I get off the top of my head? If I can remember, that is Katie Leigh did, Noel North. A few others did. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but I do have like a big folder of all my interviews, so I might show you that after this, if that's okay. Well, not like all the interviews, but just like everyone who I've talked to. And like, I even have interviews from people who didn't make it into the final cut. It's mainly because there was not enough room. Like, I know it's 2 hours long, but I didn't want to make it like 2.5 hours long. I mean, to be fair, if I cut it down to an hour, there'd be a director's cut, which is 2.5 hours long. Anyway, that's enough of me talking. I'm so sorry for babbling on.
That's all right. That's okay.
John, let's talk about you. So you started at Hanna-Barbera in the early 80s. What was the first show that you wrote for?
The first one I wrote was a Scooby-Doo cartoon called Scoobsy, which was a parody of the popular movie Tootsie at that time with Dustin Hoffman. And that might not have been the first one that aired. And I don't remember what the first one that aired was, but Scoobsy was the first one I wrote, along with Cynthia Friedlove, my partner at that time, my writing partner. And Yeah, but before that, I had started out as a film editor. I'd started out in the editorial department, and I worked in Hanna-Barbera in the editorial department for a little while. So my first Hanna-Barbera credit is as a sound editor on the Fonz and the Happy Days Gang cartoon show and the Laverne and Shirley in the Army cartoon show. So that's the first time you see my name on screen in a Hanna-Barbera product. And then I went away and did some other stuff. And then I came back as a writer. And the first thing I wrote was for Scooby-Doo.
Wow, that's so cool. I'm just looking at your Facebook post. I'm having, yes, as I said before, you believe you are the first Black writer for TV animation. Your first Scooby-Doo cartoon having premiered October 8th, 1983. From major animation company, having been hired by Hanna-Barbera in 1982.
Yes.
And you are the first Black showrunner in TV animation. You were the head writer, story editor for MoonDreamers.
MoonDreamers. That was a segment. That was an animated series that was in the middle of My Little Pony. So there'd be a My Little Pony segment in the beginning, and then there'd be something in the middle.
Glow Friends or MoonDreamers. Yeah. Exactly.
Or Potato Head Kids. And then there'd be another MoonDreamers segment. So that middle segment, I think we did 13 MoonDreamers. And MoonDreamers was a Hasbro toy. I actually still have a lot of them, or almost all of them. So yeah, a lot of what we did, that was for a company called Marvel Productions.
Yep, it was indeed. And it was also done by Hasbro and Sunbow Productions and distributed by Classic Television, all of which did My Little Pony, Glow Friends, the Transformers animated series, G.I. Joe.
Yes.
Basically all cartoons based off toy lines.
Yes, we were basically, our company just did Hasbro stuff, and we animated all their toy properties.
Wow. I've got to ask you, MoonDreamers, really good cast. Trez McNeil, Clive Revel, Neil Ross, Jennifer Darling, Peter Cullen. Have you met Peter Cullen?
I have met him. I honestly can't say I remember because MoonDreamers was a long time ago. But yeah, no, I worked with, back in those days, when you recorded a cartoon, everybody came together in the booth. And so you met everyone that day, and worked with everyone, and I was there for all of the recordings, so I met everyone that's listed. It's funny you mentioned Clive Revel. I had totally forgotten that he was in that cast, and I have since met him again on totally different occasions, but no, I forgot that he was in the MoonDreamers.
And Alan Dinehart was the voice director, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, no.
That's just what I'm getting off Wikipedia, and people say Wikipedia was as fake information, so what I'm saying might not be accurate.
Yeah, there are some major errors. Alan Dinehart, I knew. The very first job I ever got in Los Angeles was working for Ruby Spears in their editorial department. And one of the shows they did a show called the Plastic Man Adventure Comedy Hour. And one of the shows in that hour was a thing called Rickety Rocket, which was an all-black animated cast. It wasn't an all-black voice cast. I think there was at least one character who was voiced by a white voiceover person. But Alan Dinehart was the voice director on all of those Rickety Rockets. So I knew Alan well because I cut all the 1/4-inch tape on that show. After the show was recorded, it would come back to the studio, and I and another fellow would have to sit there and cut out all the bad stuff and join up all the good stuff. That was called cutting 1/4-inch. So I did it for that show, and a couple of times Alan had us come to the studio and watch him record the cast. So that's how I knew Alan. Okay, MoonDreamers was directed by a guy named Stu Rosen.
Stu Rosen, yeah.
And Stu also did Fraggle Rock, which I also was the head writer for. So
yeah, that name really rings a bell because I spoke to Doug Stone recently. He was Matt Tracker in The Mask, and he told me a story about how he met Stu Rosen at a recording session. And Stu was like to him, "Do you want to see the best person in the business? Come with me." He took away to the recording booth, and standing there was Frank Welker.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And Frank's lovely. I've met him on a few occasions. I've met him in person. I met him virtually a few times. I'm meeting him again this year in Edinburgh this autumn. So yeah,
Lucky him.
he loved my documentary dearly, and I'm very happy about that.
Yeah.
Back to Rickety Rocket. Johnny Brown was a part of the cast who we sadly lost only about just under 2 weeks ago. What was it like working with him?
Oh, he was delightful. That whole cast was delightful. And it was the very first cast that I had any real connection with since I was brand spanking new in the business. So they were all just wonderful. They were very sweet people. Johnny was a very talented young man. He had come off the Broadway stage where he had a hit with a play that Sammy Davis Jr. had done called Golden Boy. And Johnny Brown had the showstopper number, which was Don't Forget 127th Street. That was a big number. I think you can still find it online. But he was a extremely talented guy, could sing, he could dance. Very, very nice man. And I thoroughly enjoyed meeting him.
That's a lovely anecdote. That's so lovely of you to say, John. Oh, bless. Well, that's a big loss, definitely, to both Broadway and the acting world. Definitely,
yeah,
like
absolutely.
on screen, voice acting and stuff like that. So the Plastic Man Comedy Adventure Show, that is wow. Okay, so the other two segments, obviously Mighty Man and Yuck, which that was the first time Peter Cullen and Frank Welker worked together before they did Transformers.
Wow.
What's funny is that they played sidekicks, like both best buddies in that show, but then in Transformers they just played enemies. And then you got Fangface and Fangpuss, which was also Frank Welker, and that was actually Susan Blue's first voice acting role.
Oh, well, see, I'm learning from you.
Yeah. Have you met Susan Blue?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've met them all, again, working on those shows. I would occasionally go to recording sessions. Everybody was new to me back then. The casts that I remember are the ones who became my friends down the line. So when we did Fraggle Rock, all of those people are still my friends. Rob Paulson, Bobby Bergen, Barbara Goodson. So those are the people that I remember working with the best. And then, of course, the famous people, at Hanna-Barbera, the people who were very famous at that time, to me, having been a fan of cartoons myself when I was a kid. So to be working with June Foray, Rocky of Rocky and Bullwinkle, to be working with good grief.
There's another one. Dawes Butler.
Dawes Butler. I mean, to even meet Dawes Butler or Don Messick or there was another one that just came to me, Paul Winchell.
Oh, it's Paul Winchell, yeah.
He was brilliant. I had grown up being a huge fan of Paul Winchell and Jerry Mahoney, because I think Paul was probably one of the greatest ventriloquists that ever lived. So to meet those people was very memorable for me because I had grown up really admiring their work.
Yeah, definitely. Can I just apologize for just interrupting then? It's just Dawes came to my head. I was like, okay. I know, like, obviously there's Don Messick and Gene Frey, but Dawes was he was pretty much every single Hanna-Barbera cartoon character in the 50s, 60s.
Yeah, I mean, he was every character. He and Don Messick were every character I ever grew up with. And then, people like Mel Blanc, it was exciting to meet him and work with him. So, and by the way, it's your show. You can interrupt me anytime you want.
Oh, oh, John. Oh, well, it's my show, but I feel as if the guest should be, the guest is on top, always on top, as I sometimes say. They're never below me; they're always on top of me, or even just on the same level.
Well, I see us as being on the same level, so you can interrupt anytime you want. Also, I'm from the East Coast, so we're used to interrupting one another. I'm very comfortable with interruption.
Oh, well, I would say thank you for saying that, but then that just sounds really rude of me. Oh yeah, you can interrupt me. Oh, thank you. I just wanted to interrupt and say, with Fraggle Rock, obviously there's more people. There's Mona Marshall, Patricia Paris, Patrick Pinney, John Stevenson. I know Mona, Patricia. I kind of spoke with her a little bit. I reached her husband to obviously try and ask her because she did an episode of Disney's Adventures of the Gummy Bears with Bill Scott, and I was just wondering, do you remember him? She didn't remember him, but yeah, it was quite hard. I think There was another voice actor who I struggled to get to, William Calloway. Do you remember William?
Well, the name is familiar, and I probably worked with him, but I don't remember him at all. I'll tell you a funny story, though, about Pat Paris. When I first came to town, I knew a guy who was working with Tokyo Movie Shinsha, and they were trying to come over to this country and get established in this country. And they had a property called Cobra, which was this guy named Johnson who had an arm that could turn into a huge mechanical gun.
Wow.
I think it was called Cyber Gun or Psycho Gun or something like that. Anyway, we were going to do an English language dub of this pilot, this Cobra pilot. And the person I was working for asked me if I would, work with him to find a cast. And so that's when I met Pat Paris, because Pat was one of the people that we hired for that pilot. She was the robot, the sidekick robot, who the character was undercover and didn't even realize it. His mind had been wiped clean, and he didn't realize that he just thought he was a regular guy, and he didn't realize that he was a cyber weapon, basically. And he had a little robot that followed him around. But then when he would transform into, this weapon, she would transform from a little R2-D2 kind of robot to a sexy, sexy woman robot. So Pat Paris played both. She played the R2-D2 character, and she talked kind of like this: "Johnson, what are you doing?" And then she would become the sexy robot and have a very sultry voice. And that was the first time I worked with Pat. Then years later, I did a show on Hanna-Barbera. I wrote for a show called Shirt Tales, which was a very cute show, and I really enjoyed it, based on a greeting card line that Hallmark did.
Oh, yeah.
Little cute animals. And Patty Paris was one of the Shirt Tales. She was Pam. And then years later, if I'm not mistaken, I had her come in and do something on Spider-Man, but I have no idea what she did on Spider-Man. I can't remember. But so Pat is someone that's kind of popped in and out of my entire career.
Oh, that's such a lovely story. Oh, are you still in touch with her by any chance?
No, not at all, unfortunately. But I think of her, from time to time, and I remember her fondly. And she was a really great talent. I think she was really one of the main voiceover people that first impressed me, that I ever worked with.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll message her husband in a bit, and I'll tell him to tell Pat that you said hi.
No, please do.
I will. Thank you. You're welcome.
That would be great.
You're welcome. It honestly paid off when I just finally reached her. It was just it felt, I was just like, that's it. I've done it. I can ask like a question and stuff. I haven't spoken to her husband in a while, but I will definitely message him, because I think last time I did message asking, "Oh yeah, has Pat ever worked with Bill Scott at all?" No, you've wrote for a few modern cartoons as well, like Justice League Action and Pink Panther and Pals and Static Shock, where you were the head writer. Do you prefer writing for classic cartoons or modern cartoons?
I prefer writing for anybody that will pay me.
Oh, I see.
I don't have a preference. Each one has its appeal. And I'm very happy to write for any genre. I was not the head writer on Static Shock. I was one of the head writers on Static Shock, but I was a head writer on Static Shock. I was working with Alan Burnett. Some of the action adventure stuff I've done has been really wonderful and exciting, like, for instance, Spider-Man and Static Shock. And I've gotten to work with amazing casts on those shows. I love writing comedy. My one produced feature is a comedy, live action feature. I have always enjoyed, writing funny cartoons. And obviously I started out writing for Scooby. When I started writing, I was first perceived as a comedy writer. And then it was hard for me to break into action adventure, even though I had grown up on action adventure comic books. And had never thought of myself as a comedy writer per se. But anyway, I started out writing comedy. Then I finally broke into action adventure. Then it was hard for people to perceive me as a comedy writer. But one of the things I thoroughly enjoyed is writing preschool. I did a show called JJ the Jet Plane for PBS.
I love
That was
JJ. I
that
grew
was
up with that
well.
show. Oh.
I love to hear that. A lot of people did. I wrote almost all of those, quite frankly, and that I did on and off for 10 years. And in some ways, that was one of the most satisfying jobs I ever had because I did have a lot of control over that show and I was able to write a lot of it. And it was a very sweet show. It was really fun to write. And I happened to, my significant other and I, Cynthia, had moved into a house in Northridge. And I had a little upstairs office and I would meet with, I did for a while have outside writers on that show, not for a very long time. And I didn't have too many outside writers on that show, but I'd meet them at a little restaurant nearby and I would do all my work in my little office in Northridge and it was great fun. So, each show carries with it a good memory and an opportunity to do good work, as well as a paycheck. So I'm very fortunate because I never felt that I could say no to any kind of job. And so I've established myself as having written many different kinds of genres.
Yeah, I see what you mean. JJ had a really good cast. Originally there was Mary Kay Bergman as JJ. Did you ever get to meet her?
I knew Mary Kay well. And in fact, I still have when we premiered JJ, she took it upon herself to make JJ t-shirts.
Really?
Yeah, and so when we walked in, we held the premiere at the Air and Space Museum. I forget where it is, maybe Long Beach or something like that. I forget where that is. But anyways, we walked in, she was right there at the door and handing out t-shirts to everybody. And I still have my shirt. She was wonderful. She was so sweet and she was a delight and a huge talent. And I still can't believe that she's gone.
Yes, I know I've heard about her story, and it's just, I think it's
Yeah,
bless her heart, honestly.
yeah. But she was a wonderful talent. She was a very delightful woman. And yes, I did know her pretty well.
Oh, I've just had a look on Google. Is it the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum,
Maybe. Where is it located?
Washington, D.C.?
Oh no, we had ours here in California, Southern California. There's some air museum in Southern California that we commandeered for the day, and that became our location for the premiere of JJ.
There is a San Diego Air and Space Museum.
It might have been that,
Hmm.
but I think it was closer. I think it was in Long Beach or someplace like that.
Air and Space Museum, Long Beach,
Or it
and
might just be an air museum, an
oh
airplane.
yeah, Air Museum Long Beach.
Oh, there you go. Well, that was it.
Wait, oh, it says Air Museum Long Beach. Sponsor, is it a real place? I don't know. It says that says Long Island, New York. No, that's not where I want to go. Well, that's just really the term it's using. It's just all these different places, but you know. And of course, Debbie Derryberry then took over as the voice of JJ. What did you meet her? Did you work
Well,
with her?
what's so funny is you're telling me this, and the funny thing is, of course, I met her, but then subsequently down the line, when I met her again at one of her book signings, I had no knowledge of her having been the voice of JJ because I just forgot. I mean, again, if someone isn't my friend, you get these people shuffle in and out, and you meet them, and then you kind of forget. But no, that's news that Debbie was the second voice of JJ. I totally forgot that. This happens. My friend Pat Jankowitz came up to me once and he said, "What was it like working with Carrie Moss?" And I looked at him and I said, "Did I ever work with Carrie Moss?" And he says, "Oh yeah, she was in Spider-Man episode, blah, 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 blah." So I worked with Carrie Moss, but that came as a big surprise to me. Usually what happens is you're so immersed in your work, you're trying to get a show out the door. You got 5 scripts going at once. You get called in, you got to go to a recording session. You go to the recording session, you meet everybody. Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. If they're not particularly famous at that moment, you meet them and then you're done. And then you go back to the office and you're immersed back in whatever you're really dealing with that day. So as I say, it's sometimes hard for me to remember some of the people that I've worked with.
I see. I'm having a look again at the Facebook post.
Mhm.
You were obviously the head writer for Kid and Play,
Yes.
which had an all black voice cast.
Hmm.
And wow, I mean, weren't they like a hip hop duo? I think
They still are.
they're still going.
Oh
Let's have a
yeah,
look.
they're still touring every now and then. Yes, I actually developed their show from the ground up
Uh-huh.
for NBC, and then I wrote after the show was over, I wrote one of their live action features called
Oh
Class
wow.
Act
Wow.
for Warner Brothers.
So it's an animated. So is it the is it? Oh, I see. Oh, the real Kid and Play appeared in live action wraparounds of the cartoons, but voice hours took over for the animated versions of the duo. I
Hmm.
see.
Yeah,
Right.
they didn't do their voices. Their voices were done by Brian
Brian
Stokes.
Stokes Mitchell and J.D. Hall.
Right. Actually, no, JD was one of the voice people on the show, but Hooks, I
Oh no,
think,
it says he was Pitbull and Mr. Reed. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, that's okay. Hooks, I can't remember. Was it Kevin
Chris
Hooks?
Hooks.
Chris Hooks. Chris Hooks was Kid, and Brian Stokes Mitchell was Play.
Uh, Chris Hooks voice actor. I'm just trying to find him now. I can't. What? I search up Chris Hooks, and the first person that comes up is Corey Burton. What? Like, I can't find anything else out about him at
Uh,
all. It's like he's just disappeared.
well, he's the son of Robert Hooks, who's a very famous actor,
Oh,
very wonderful actor, who's done everything. A lot of television, been in Star Trek movies, was one of the pioneer Black actors of Broadway.
oh,
And
wow.
the entire Hooks family has done all kinds of things. I think the Hooks sons mostly ended up, or at least one of them has ended up being a director.
Oh, right. I
Um,
found him now. He's called Christopher Carter. That's what he's on Google as.
okay, well, there you
Yeah.
go.
There,
Uh-huh.
there we go. There we go. Um, while I continue researching up Kid and Play for my next question,
Mhm.
I'd like to talk to you about just real quick. It says on this post that you're working, you're work like you're still working. You've had a career that spans 40 years. It's made
Yeah.
you the longest running Black writer in TV animation history. And you've got a
Yes.
major animated project that is to be released later this year. Is there anything you can say about it, or is it just covered up with NDAs?
It's covered up with NDAs.
Oh, I don't say. Is it a film or a TV show?
I can't tell you.
Oh dear. Yeah, I just signed an NDA last night for the voice acting gig I was telling you about. Well, I've said it on social media. I can say about my character and obviously like show her design. I can't say anything to do with the ride and stuff. That is strictly confidential until next summer. So yeah, that was the first ever NDA I actually signed, to be fair.
Wow,
That
that's
was
exciting.
yeah, honestly, it really was. It made me feel like it made me feel like a professional. um, you've worked for pretty much tons of animation companies: Hanna Barbera, Ruby Spears, Saban,
Saban.
Saban,
Saban.
Deke, Disney, Warner Brothers, Marvel, and you've done work for ABC, CBS, NBC, PBS, and
Mhm.
Netflix. Um, this is going to be a hard one. What's your favorite cartoon that you've written for? And you can say Spider-Man, by the way.
It
I
is
thought
Spider-Man.
so. I thought so.
It wasn't the easiest, and it wasn't the most fun, but in terms of its impact and in terms of um, the the kind of storytelling that I got to do, Spider-Man really is the best. I had 65 half hours. I had a lot of control over all but 13 of them. The first 13 I didn't have a lot of control over, but after that, it's really, straight from my head onto the screen, via some really wonderful writers. I had some wonderful writers on staff, but all the story points were ones that I had come up with, and I did write some episodes myself. So it would have to be Spider-Man. But there are a lot of other things that I've enjoyed. So in some ways, it's hard. Somebody once said that, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get all of the categories, but there are the projects you love. There are the projects that everybody thinks are great. There are the projects that are easy. There are the projects that are really hard. And I mean, and they're not always the same. Sometimes they're in different categories. Easiest show I ever did might be JJ, simply because I had a lot of I had a lot of control over that, and the stories were very sweet and fun. And then some shows are ridiculously hard, and then they don't turn out to be very good. And so you do your hardest work, the one where you really work the hardest, and that's the one that people pay the least attention to sometimes. So it's a kind of a mixed bag. But Spider-Man, I would say, hits most of the categories for me. Although it was not fun to do the show. It was after a while, but in the beginning, it was kind of a nightmare.
I see. I've just had a look just to go back to Kid and Play real quick.
Mm-hmm.
On the Wikipedia page, on the big column that you see at the top of the page that tells you the information, it just says Brian Stokes Mitchell and J.D. Hall as the voices. And silly, I didn't look at the cast list below. I don't know why Chris Hooks isn't listed up on that list, but it just got me. I was like, J.D. Hall, and then I looked up his age. He was born in the 1940s. I was like, no, surely not.
Well, here's what's silly about that list, because in the regular cast, we had Martin Lawrence, we had Tommy Davidson,
mm-hmm.
we had Cree Summer,
and Jack Angel,
and we had I don't remember Jack Angel being part of the regular cast. He might have come in and done an episode,
additional voice or something.
But we had Dawn Lewis,
mm-hmm.
we had Rain Pryor, Richard Pryor's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So we had some really great voices on that show, and JD was on the show. JD also
he was Pitbull and Mr. Reed.
Yeah, JD also did some Spider-Man episodes. If I'm not mistaken, he was Blade on my Spider-Man series.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wikipedia is full of errors. I never pay any attention to it.
Yeah. It says additional voices were done by Charlie Adler, Sue Blue, Rob Paulson, Janet Waldo, Patrick Zimmerman, Les Tremaine, and Tom McHugh.
Well, I don't remember meeting Rob on Kid and Play, but that might have happened. But then Rob and I became friends when he did Fraggle Rock.
Yeah. Oh, Rob's an amazing guy, honestly. I have so much love and respect for him, man.
He is the best.
Have a look at Spider-Man. So what inspired you to make your own did you create this Spider-Man series in the 90s? Did you create, or did you just write for it?
I was the producer.
Oh, you're the producer.
I developed it for television, and I was the head writer. I was in charge of all the writing.
Were any of your episodes that you've written for any shows based on anything that happened to you in real life, or is it just really just going by what the plotters just told you?
Well, I'm the plotter.
Oh.
on Spider-Man, I was the plotter. I ran.
Where'd you come up with your plot ideas for Spider-Man?
Well, that's a good question. Well, a lot of it was inspired by the book, the comic book. Yeah. What I tried to do on Spider-Man was, Spider-Man debuted. I figured this out recently. Spider-Man debuted just about a week before I turned, I think, 10 or 9. So I was the prime target for Spider-Man, and I probably picked up its 3rd or 4th issue when I started reading it. So I was reading the comic book when it was at its best, quite frankly, when it was just getting up and running. So what I tried to do for young viewers of my animated series was recreate the same experience I had as a kid reading Spider-Man, excuse me, when it was brand new. I tried to recreate that experience for young kids watching our show. Mm-hmm. So my feeling about my job was to bring the comic book, the spirit of the comic book, to life. We didn't do the comic book because you can't really take a comic book and translate it to the screen very successfully. Comic books are very simplistically written, and bringing something to the screen is a very complicated process. But I wanted to bring the spirit of the comic book. So I was inspired by the comic book, not so much from my own life.
I was going to say, because that must have been a dream of yours come true when you asked to produce that show. I'm
Yes.
right for it.
Oh yeah, and that's what makes it probably one of my favorite gigs, is that I really had been a fan of the character, and that wasn't always the case in my career. As I say, I started writing Scooby Doo, but I was never a huge fan of Scooby Doo, and more often than not, you get assigned to shows that you have no familiarity with, but you have to kind of get up and running very quickly. When they hired me to do Kid and Play, I had no idea who Kid and Play were, and they had just had a hit movie called House Party, and I literally went and saw the movie the last night that it was playing in the movie theaters. This is before you had videotape and before you could buy DVDs.
Yeah.
I saw the movie at the very last minute, and then that's how I became familiar with who they were. So more often than not, you get handed something that's totally new to you. But in the case of Spider-Man, it was something, for which I had been a really big fan.
Wonderful. I mean, with Spider-Man, you had such a stellar cast: Christopher Daniel Barnes, Jennifer Hale, Ed Asner, Linda Gary, Neil Ross, Roscoe Lee Brown, Hank Azaria, Mark Hamill. Wow. What a cast.
It was a great cast. I mean, it was amazing. And Chris Barnes, I think, is one of the greatest voiceover actors I've ever encountered. So we had a wonderful opportunity to do really great dramatic work on Spider-Man, and we had a fantastic cast to back it up.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Definitely. It's definitely up there with the rest of the Spider-Man shows. I think they're all awesome. I'd like to ask you, what's it like to work with, because on this show, obviously, you had Ed Asner, who we recently just lost, Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker himself. What was it like to work with him?
Mark was great. I mean, Mark is a really wonderful actor, and I don't think at that particular time he was thought of as being a great actor, and he certainly at that particular time wasn't thought of as being a great voiceover actor, but he was. And so it was very wonderful to have him in the booth and see how amazingly talented he was. We only had him for a couple of episodes. He was the Hobgoblin. I think so. We only really had him for just about 2 episodes. Maybe he came back later in the series. I can't remember. As a person, I liked him. I just thought he was a really cool guy to be around, and he was very comfortable to work with. And I stupidly, for some reason, never got a photo with him. I don't know what I was thinking, but again, you're so immersed in your work, you don't think of these things. But Mark was great. Ed Asner, again. I mean, I remember the first day we did a table read, and I found myself sitting next to Ed Asner, the famous Ed Asner, TV Hall of Famer Ed Asner, and I could barely breathe. But after a while, Ed became a very good friend, and he was always very nice to me. There were a couple of times I was up at his house, and great guy to talk with, very intelligent. Very warm, friendly, down to earth, funny guy. And I'm glad I got to see him. I ran into him at a convention just maybe about a year before he passed away. So I did kind of get to see him and give him a big hug. Ed was very big on hugs and kisses. He would always kiss you on the cheek. I've got a picture of Ed kissing me on the cheek.
Oh, yeah, I was just looking them up. Yeah, Ed Asner from the Mary Tyler Moore Show. I was saying, is it that show? Something I had to check double quick.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd like to ask as my final question is what's the most recent cartoon that you've wrote for that you can say that has been released?
Oh, well, I don't know what the most recent was. In general, the last few that I've done, I did do a Justice League action, which I co-wrote with my sometimes current partner, Rebecca Kaminsky. And Rebecca and I did a Justice League action, which strangely enough, we were not credited for on the script, but we wrote the script. So I don't know what happened there. We ended up getting a story by credit, and that's complete nonsense. We did an episode of Legend Quest on Netflix, And then we also did an episode of Robozuna. We did a couple of episodes of Robozuna, 2 or 3 on also on Netflix. So those are the most recent things, but I'm very excited about this thing that's coming up this summer. And to me, that kind of harkens back to the good stuff that I used to do back in the day, as opposed to some of the newer things, which are just, they're fun, but I don't feel like I'm getting to do my greatest work when I write those kinds of things. So.
Nice one, John. Hopefully we can do a part 2 like this summer when this project has been formally announced, and then we can talk more about it. We can do a part 2. There's still so much to talk about.
Anytime you want, my dear. I'd be happy to.
Good idea. Are you on social media? Where can we all find you on social media? Do you have
I have a website, johnsemper.com, JOHNSEMPER. People always want to put an extra L or a T in my name, Sempler or Sempter. I don't know what that is. That's a weird thing, but it's Semper, SEMPER.
I was spelling it before and I put Semper. I was like, no, that's not right. It's Semper.
Everyone does that. I've never
sorry.
understood that. That's okay. I've never understood it because it's a very straightforward name. But yes, johnsemper.com. You can read about my career. And then I'm on Instagram. Little bit. I'm on Twitter almost hardly, not at all, because it confuses me. I love Facebook, and I'm on Facebook every day, so I can usually be accessed via Facebook. So if anyone's really looking for me and wants to get in touch with me, Facebook is probably the best way to do it.
That sounds brilliant. My phone's getting flooded with notifications. You'll just have to excuse me while I just try and clear them and stuff.
You're a popular person.
Sometimes I can't handle the fame. Sometimes it gets too much me, but then it's just up and down. Thank you guys at home for watching, and do bear with me if I kind of stuttered a little or just a little bit awkward. I'm not very good at socially communicating, obviously with my Asperger's. Thank you so much for watching this interview with the lovely John Semper. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, go check out John's website, and we'll hopefully do a part 2 in the future. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay happy, and I'll see you around. Bye, and cut.